I'll tell you what. We are live now and you're enjoying your great tea. What kind of tea are you drinking?
This is an English breakfast combined with a Sri Lankan tea.
Oh,
I've been to
you
Sri.
mixed it up a little bit.
Yeah, I always like to mix things up, especially tea. But I think especially life, I just like to mix things up. I'm not a sort of one-dimensional, or not that you are one-dimensional if you do something purely. It's just I think I think a lot of people, I think everyone is almost grows up in an eclectic culture, and we're exposed to so many ideas and cultures and ethnic groups and traditions that it's very hard to remain sort of totally and wholly dedicated to one way. And if you have a curious and open mind, then you just want to try different things. But I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's the same with cooking. I did some cooking classes, and when I cook, it's what's on the shelf, what's available, what spices can I throw in, what else can I try. It's an exploration. It's more like art, and I see life like that at its best. It's an exploration, and it's not sort of one way. You don't have to do it one way. You could do it many ways. And I think it's interesting because there's so many movements nowadays about masculinity and femininity, and it's become quite a hot topic of how people identify. And a lot of people don't identify particularly as masculine or feminine or male or female. So I think these kind of this cross pollination of ideas is happening on different fronts and on different levels in the world and in society. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Debbie.
Well, you guys, I'm 68 years old. I'm a female. I identify as female. So this stuff was super new. And the one thing is that we started out with, tagging people giving themselves their own labels and this and that. But there's so many now that to me, I think it's very confusing. And there's this other thing. Um, why? Why do we have to go into letting everyone know and putting it out there on a big label that we're this, plus that? I mean, it's getting a little crazy to me. It was easier back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, well, I think your name is the label. That is the label. So why do we need to have more labels? Because you can change your name, and people do change your name, and sometimes they do it quite short-lived, or they change it sort of quite quickly back to their original name. Or I've had friends, and they change it and then they change it back. So it's not stuck. Your name doesn't seem to be stuck, and people are accommodating. And legally you can change your name. I think in Australia once every. I don't think you can do it once a week, but I think once every year or once every
Are you
18
kidding
months.
me? Is that
Yeah,
so cool? But legally, that's a big hornet's nest.
to
But
change your name.
yeah, you mean
Well,
like your
where's
whole name or just your first name?
your name? You can change your name, sure. Can you not do
Wow.
that in America?
You can start using a different name, but we have our legal names. And so a lot of times people go to court, so it's a big thing. I would
Huh.
it because people, I guess over here we want to know who's who, and especially in business or whatever. But I love the idea of like we just like change our name, try it out, try something different. I don't know what I would change to.
Well, there's a lot of numerology involved in people who believe that your name has a tremendous karmic power on your life and your destiny. So that's also an interesting factor. I read a little bit of some numerology, and the author was saying that the if you when you get married, you change your destiny, and each if you keep getting married, then a lot of things will change in terms of health, in terms of your finances, your career, your emotions. So I think they do have an influence. There is an influence. I think it's more complicated than just a name. You cannot just change your name and then everything's going to change. I don't think, unless you believe that. So belief is so strong. So if I believe that if my name becomes Charlie, then my life is going to be completely different. Then if I wake up every day saying my life is totally different, then it is going to be totally different. It's a self-fulfilling
Correct.
prophecy, or it
That's
can be at
right.
least.
I never changed I got married and I changed my name. And then I got married again. I didn't change my name because I just don't care. I like my name. I like Debbie Duncan. And so I go, well, I'm good. But there's a lot of things that I'm that way about. I feel like there's things that don't really matter. I'm okay with this,
Yeah.
and I always thought that maybe it was a man's ego why the women changed their name to be identified with him. And it always got me to the core that why does a woman have to change their name? Now you don't have to. And so I don't. But you know what? My friends and family still will write to me under my husband's name. It's not my legal name or anything, but they
Mm.
will put it on the envelope. And my older friends were horrified that I didn't take on this new husband's last name. I'm like, why? It doesn't matter to me.
Mm.
To me, I don't have to have it. And so I think I'm abnormal that way because most people take on their husband's name, and I think some of them husbands would get mad. I don't think mine
Yeah,
cares.
it's really interesting. I'd love to hear how other people feel about this topic. I feel a bit neutral, and I don't think you're abnormal at all. I think a lot of women I meet have the same idea, and they're not changing their names. And also, I find people have a sort of career name, where their working name, and then they have their
That is it.
private name. So there also can
Yeah.
be a difference.
Yeah.
Uh, if you look at Hollywood, for instance, there's each actor or actress, because some of them don't like to be called actress. They
Actor.
change their, I don't know why that is, but they change their some of them get married multiple times, but they have a stage name which remains
Right.
unchanging. So there's multiple ways to do it. I always found it a little bit strange, and I've never been married, so I've never had to come to this question. Or
How would you feel, David, if you got married? I think I already know how you'd feel, but I want you to be super honest on this. If you got married to someone, do you feel that strongly that they need to change their last name to yours?
no, I thought you were going to ask me if I got married, how would I feel if my name got changed to their name? That's what I thought. That's what I was expecting, and I was thinking, oh, that's a good question, Debbie. No, I wouldn't care too much. I don't feel an attachment to that scenario. I feel it's just open territory where I'm not particularly attached either way. If they and it's kind of, I think either way I would feel a little bit in strange territory. Having never got married before, it does just feel a bit foreign and unfamiliar, just because of course I've never done it before, and I haven't really thought seriously about it either. So it's
Yeah.
really
I
kind
to
of
me,
like,
I just don't care, but I think there's people that I think the men want their children to have their last names. The family name goes on and on. My family name died out, so I'm like, I'm fine with
mm,
that. I don't care. We're all die, and then there's nothing. I mean, I swear. What's the big deal about having the name go on and on and on? To
yeah,
me, I don't
it's
care.
a lot of people are more traditional in that way, and feeling even with family heirlooms and jewelry and things like that, feeling like this needs to stay in the family, and it can be debated a lot. Even things like a diamond ring, which may go to a someone who's not of the family, for instance, but they're marrying into the family, and then people can often feel, oh, we wanted it to stay within the original family, and so there's a lot of there are a lot of emotions and feelings around the belongings that have ancestral value or a lot of attachment. And I think the
Well,
royal family in England is something really peculiar on
what
this
they
topic.
do?
They have so many traditions, and everything is so hard, and there's not a lot of freedom with what they can do. So when people outsiders come into the family, like Meghan Markle, she just must have got a shock of all their traditions. She had to bow to them and do all these curtsy. It's called a curtsy. So very traditional and very formal. So they dress up for dinner in a suit or whatever, and that's how they have servants.
You said traditional. The thing is with the royalty, not my thing, not my thing. And but the fact is that people love their king, they love their queen, they love the idea, and so that's their culture. And but to me, they're just people, guys. They just happen to have a lot of money,
They're
and
definitely just people that they do sit on a throne. They do have a lot of jewels, high colors, and yeah, it's remarkable how many jewels they have. And I've been to the British Museum where they have the crown and different, not one crown, different royal crowns. I think
Mhm.
every time you become a king or queen, you get a new crown with lots of jewels on it, filled with diamonds, and it's extraordinary.
Well, they have a history of getting gifted different tiaras and crowns, and they refashion their jewels, except for the crown jewels stay the same. But I with traditions, there's things that were brought down in my family that were Native American, and actually my family's from Sonora, Mexico. So those things I keep that within the lineage of the people that are active in the Native American customs and stuff. So I'm the one that got everything, and I'm the one who gave it. I said I hope it can go in a museum, but let's keep it within the people that will use it for their rituals and so on. And so that keeps stays in the family. Even that family is not immediate family. It's many cousins and all. But I think that was important to keep the cultural things together. But I do have a necklace of my grandmother's. That's quite something. I added to it jewels, and that has always been available for any of the weddings in the family, if anybody, because it's pretty fancy. And I will gift it to my niece Kim. It's on record now that she'll just be holding it for anybody who wants to borrow it. But I can see that I've got things earmarked, but when we're gone, we're gone. You might as well give it away.
Yeah, and
Enjoy it, whatever
particularly,
you want.
some people are more impermanent than others, and I meet some people and they have a whole lot of things in storage, and I've never had anything in storage, so I'm kind of like, if I moved, I just moved, and whatever was there, just.
See, I called you the nomad, and that's they just
Yeah,
take
and
their
so
little bundle and
yeah,
go through
and so
the
now I'm
country.
just whatever it is. I've traveled with a suitcase, with a bag, whatever it is, and I totally forget whatever was left behind. I cannot remember anything. Uh, and so I think I have that nomadic spirit where
You know
I'm not.
what? That's refreshing to me. That is amazing. I think that would be a good way to go. Not to have that connection to all the possessions. I mean, I have I'm in a big room here full of paranormal stuff, metaphysical stuff. I have that right there is that a spirit trumpet. I've got more than one. I've got all these really cool things. I'm not really attached to them, but I have a lot of things that I just love. I love so
Mm,
much for their
yeah.
uniqueness, for the appreciation of somebody made it. And so that would be hard for me.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back about there's certain things like the shamanic tools which had real value to me that were made by shamans and I used in healing work and I think what really affected me somewhat was when I came back to Australia and at the airport they went through it happened about 3 times. They went through every bit of my luggage to the point that they literally looked at papers. They opened up folders and looked at papers one by one. They looked at every little last bit of what I was traveling with, and they X-rayed the rattle. I had a shamanic rattle that got
We were
X-rayed.
we were talking about you.
King of Cups.
You're a king of cups. He said king of
I
what?
I just got so much King of Wands. Oh, thank you, Andy.
Yeah, you're
I
you're
got
a king
so
of
many. I got, anyways. I had there's this airport authorities. I don't know if that's happened to you traveling before, but it's quite nerve wracking. And they literally X-rayed things, and then they said, yeah. You haven't declared that you're carrying seeds, and I said, well, what seeds? And they said, well, in the rattle. Do you know what a rattle is for? It's
yeah,
used in sound healing and shamanic.
yeah.
So it was a
My friend's a
shamanic rattle.
shaman. Yeah.
And they said, yeah. So I really like the sound in healing. It really helps me to get into the vibe. And he said, well, there's seeds in here. You haven't declared you're carrying seeds.
Did you have to leave it behind?
They were they were quite gracious. They said they could fine me $300 or whatever. They said, well, we're going to let you go because you didn't do it intentionally. We can see that. But next time you have to just declare everything basically. And so on that form they give you, when in doubt, just if you ever come to Australia, just tick everything pretty much, because it a lot of Australian they deal with bureaucracy and it's very indirect and it's not very straightforward. So the forms are not correctly, they don't put it, they say, are you dealing, do you have leather goods or something like that, or so it sounds like you're a leather trader or something. But if you have happen to have some leather on your shoes, then they can find that and find you. And they say, well, you didn't declare that you're carrying leather goods, but your intention is not, you just, well, I'm not ticking out of I'm not going to cross, or you're not naturally going to, when you have a form, when you arrive in customs, you're only going to tick the obvious things. You're not going to think, well, maybe my shoes, or
Yeah.
maybe. So it's a little tendential, and they can trip you up. If they check your luggage, they'll be able to find some piece of leather, some kind of seed, perhaps. So they can trip you up.
I have a question. Um, because you've been everywhere, you've been a lot of places around the world, and got some education, gave enlightenment, worked all over the place. Did you go to certain places so that you could actually go out? Like when we talked about tea, did you go out and explore and find everything about tea, or did you really get into the culture that way and outside of your job? Because what an opportunity to go different places. Like you said, our coffee in the United States was like what? Dirty water. What did you say?
Dishwater.
Dishwater.
Dishwater. Yeah, you're not very admired for your coffee outside of the United States. Most people question what that stuff you serve up is. They're quite
Andy,
perplexed. They're quite perplexed. But espresso coffee is quite popular outside of America, and it's seen as really the gold standard. So an espresso coffee is the gold standard. There are lots of different coffee ways of, coffee filter, all these different ways. The espresso coffee is usually the one that's respected and revered the most. In my, maybe that's just my opinion, and I don't know if anyone's into coffee culture, but it is more. There's more of a coffee culture in Australia than America, for instance. But in
You
terms
know
of
what?
the
That's a
refinement,
great name for a coffee house, coffee culture.
coffee culture,
They
yeah.
could
So to
sell
answer your
all the different pots and all the
To
different
answer your
things.
question, though, because you did ask me a question, I have obviously been to a lot of places and been absorbed in the culture, and often I do that through spending time with the people. And in terms of like really immersing myself in I just think of tea. I'm not sure what other examples there are. I've been to a lot of tea plantations, and I've explored lots of different teas. And when I was in China, I just loved to go to the markets because, in American market, you probably have a lot of clothes. But in China, they do have a lot of clothes as well. They have these merchants, that sell tea, and there's so many different kinds of tea, and everything from incredibly expensive. I think it was even something like $1,000 a pound, to $1 a pound. So really, really, really cheap tea to really, really expensive tea, and they're people with such refinement in their taste buds that they value these very highly refined teas that are grown in a mountaintop, and they have a distinctive character. So I love that thing. I love that. I just I find you that's the domain of someone who's quite wealthy, because that $1,000 pound, you do need a bit of money to spend. But I studied in China in a few Tai Chi and martial arts schools, and I had a friend from Taiwan, and he said his father only drank. I think he said it was $4,000 a kilogram. Which I couldn't believe. $4,000 a kilogram. So it's about say $2,000 a pound. And he said, yeah, his dad only drank that particular tea, and
Oh,
so there's
gee.
such a range of quality, but the marketplace. I mean, I don't know if it's definitely not exponential. It's not 2,000 times as good as the $1 tea. It's just that some people value different things, and there's a kind of dime a dozen coffee, dime a dozen tea. It's just commercial. It's just available everywhere. And then there's the more refined, expensive varieties that often have a special character. So it's and often people are willing to pay for something unique. So there may be a unique story, unique character, but often it's a family tradition. So this family has been making growing tea for generations, and there's it's very nuanced, and they have a special style, and they bring the leaves out at a time, and they care for everything. It's very done by hand, very individual. Each leaf is chosen for its special qualities. So I think teas, there's so many, even in Thailand, there are these tea cafes, tea merchants where you can sit down, and they bring you different teas to try out. So it's like and even in coffee plantations is the same kind of thing. You can try this coffee for free,
Oh,
different
like
blends.
a tasting. I
A
would love a
tasting,
coffee
yeah. So
tasting.
I've been to a few coffee plantations that have tastings, and also tea plantations. So I remember a very special part of northern Thailand, which is filled with tea plantations, and these little cafes where you go and taste different teas, and the history of that was that China, there was a Chinese migration, so the people come from China, and some of them are hold on to their Chinese culture. They still speak Mandarin. They dress like traditional Chinese. So even in Thailand, there's these sort of the tea of Thailand is often actually comes from the Chinese tradition. So there's all these interesting influences. But Indonesia, I felt was a very rich culture, and I really enjoyed going to they dye clothes in a particular way. It's called bakti, I think, or I can't remember. But they dye the scarves and particularly I bought many scarves, so I think it's mainly tablecloths, scarves. But they have a unique way of dyeing it, and that was really special to visit so many shops. And in very remote parts of Indonesia, it's very, very cheap and just so beautiful. So you can buy the most beautiful hand dyed scarf for maybe $5, for $10, and what was extraordinary about when I was in Vietnam was that I went to the village tribes, and I was trekking through the village tribe, and in the most beautiful mountains, and a lot of these areas are not, we think of, I suppose in America you have different states, but what's lost in the West is the traditional tribe. So the tribe has their own distinctive traditions and language and habits. And in a place like North Vietnam, you find a tribe that, people just think, oh, Vietnam, that's like one country, people speak the same language. Or Thailand, same thing. But it's not like that, because if you go to more remote parts, you find a tribe that has their own dress and their own traditions and their own, they live together on the mountainside. And these tribal people came I was in the tourist area, and they came every day with handmade, just the most beautiful woven handbags and scarves and all sorts of handmade things. I bought a lot of bags, which were just the most wonderful, wonderful, wonderful bags, handmade, and they're very sweet. Generally, they're very sweet. Whenever I would buy something or buy a couple of things, and then they would give me a gift. So I would get a what are those things called? A wallet or a purse?
Yeah,
Purse or wallet?
a coin purse, or
Yeah, handmade by these beautiful people, and you could give them $5, and they would give you something. I couldn't believe how little money that I felt bad for them, because you give them $5 and they give you a handbag that could have taken them a week to make or something like that, or
right.
longer. So I don't. It was so beautiful and so wonderful to have these handmade items from these cultures. And another place I visited where I loved the culture, and I found it very colorful, and people had there was so many handmade clothes and the like, was Cambodia. And unfortunately, Cambodia has a very dark history of a lot of death. I don't know if you know much about Cambodia, Debbie.
I don't. I really
So
don't.
Cambodia, people know about Germany, but Cambodia, they killed a lot of the population there. They had a very crazy leader, Pol Pot. What is his name? Something like Pol Pot, Pol Pot. And he actually, they went out and killed all the educated people. So I think
Oh,
something like 1 to 2 million people, I think, were just murdered. So it's a small country with a small population. Something like half the population was killed by this regime, and they were just, and so the country was just devastated, and now it has the most extraordinary temples that I've ever been to, the most beautiful places, and now it's got the population is growing. When you talk to the people, they have immigrants from neighboring states, so Vietnam, China. I think those are the main neighboring states with a lot of immigrants. So something like a third to half of their population are immigrants. But the devastation there, and you can feel it when you go to some of the museums from the genocide. I don't know if you've heard of Khmer Rouge.
No.
So they were a communist regime in Cambodia. Pol Pot, sorry, it wasn't. Yeah, Pol Pot was the despot, was the dictator, I believe, and they just killed. It was the end of the 1970s. They just killed intellectuals. That was their goal. Anyone who had been educated, but it was the most awful. I don't think it was half of the country. I think it was about a third of the country was killed, and then just the most awful genocide. But nearly 2 million people, and I don't know if you've heard of the killing fields of Cambodia.
No.
But so much of it is not. It's not really known. It's not part of the mainstream Western knowledge. People don't really learn much about it, and even there, the museums were pretty basic. There wasn't, because it was quite a poor country. So Germany was a much richer country, so they built bigger museums, and it was it was
wow.
But anyway, so visiting there, I really felt sort of quite a dark energy in Cambodia.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine the energy would be really kind of
Quite dark.
horrific.
At the same time, I mean, the temples I visited are just the most sublime, just the most beautiful temples I visited in the world. And that's where Angelina Jolie, she made a couple of, I think she made just one film, but she adopted. That's part of why she adopted, I think, a couple of Cambodian kids, because there's a lot of kids that have been adopted in America.
Well,
Yeah,
that sounds like an amazing country.
Yeah, well, in a way, it's being now people are moving. There is a migration. So the original Cambodians, that unfortunately is the history is so dark. But sometimes a void attracts people, so people are moving there, and there's more. Angelina Jolie brought a lot of attention to orphans, and I think she adopted 2 kids from Cambodia. But you can imagine
one was Maddox. Maddox might have come from there.
Yeah, so over there she's revered, and she made a movie there. So she went there to make a movie, and I think she discovered this genocide and these orphans, and she's done a lot of work for these orphans. And the temples, I don't know if you saw that original film in Cambodia.
No.
Because that would have shown you the temples in Cambodia, some of the temples in Cambodia. What was that film called? Tomb Raider. Did you hear about Tomb Raider?
Yes.
So that was about 20 years ago. She went to Cambodia to film Tomb Raider, and I've been to the temple. I think she filmed in 2 temples. I've been there, and it's just I must send you some pictures. I don't know if I've got my pictures, but just to show you the incredible energy of Angkor, I think means to Angkor Wat, and some of the other temples there. They were just extraordinary energy that I could just spend a lot of time in those
Well,
temples.
you were talking about Vietnam, and there was so much, strife and war and everything there. The one reason that I'm careful about what products, such as cashews and things like that, is that Agent Orange is there and probably there for 1,000 years in the ground and in the water. And these people have to live with this aftermath of this horrific,
It's
things that
very It was very disturbing to me, to be honest, because I lived in Vietnam, and there's a lot of cancer in the food supply. I mean, a lot of Agent Orange in the food supply, and
yeah.
a lot of cancer in Vietnam. It's a very traumatized society, so immense amount of trauma that people respond often in strange ways. I would say, people call it mental illness, but it's like if you go to Vietnam, you'll come across a lot of mental illness, and even in even in mundane, for me, even mundane tasks like going to the airport, I found people responding in strange ways because of all the trauma. And
Yeah.
it's very sad because I spent time in villages, fishing villages in Vietnam, and the people are very peaceful and live such a simple life, and it's such a something to be cherished and
Uh,
respected. And the idea or the concept of actually dropping something like Agent Orange, it's so anti-human that it's hard to imagine, because we do think of our, I know you're American, and I have a lot of American friends, and I've been to America, and we do have an idea that America is good. We do
oh,
have that
great.
idea.
Good.
Do you know what I mean? We have an idea that America's good, and your politicians kind of make it all sound like America's good. And when you look at something like Agent Orange, you really have to question such an idea. And for me,
Well,
having living, I lived near this fishing village, and you, it's just so harmonious, and so people are so kind, and so lived such a simple life. And what were you going to say, Debbie?
oh, well, I think the thing is that, I think we're built on, having some good principles and all of that. But historically, there's even in America, you know, decimating the Native Americans and things like that. And throughout the world, there's people that are just, excuse the term, but raping the land. And
Mm,
there, the horrible things that happen with the oil spills. But in war, they're using chemicals. And it's not just, the United States. There are people that are wiping out their own people with chemicals and stuff. So it's really, really sad. I had a
yeah.
girlfriend that fled Vietnam and on a helicopter with her husband, who actually was a doctor, and their kids, and just horrific tales of war. And now we can look at Ukraine and seeing, possibility of radiation, exposure maybe in the future and stuff, or chemicals from all these bombs and everything. It's really, really sad because the countries like you were talking about, Cambodia or Thailand or whatever, they go back so far in their culture and beautiful things that they have, and tranquil, and in their religions and everything that were peaceful. And to have these things come in, and it's like right now, it's not something of the past. It's freaking in our face that these wars are starting, or these conflicts within the peoples of these countries. I hope it stops someday, but we have to stop, you know, putting things out that hurt people, physically make them sick and
Mm.
all of that, or the PTSD.
It's a big topic. Did I tell you about when I met an arms dealer once?
Oh, wow. Do
And
tell.
it's very disturbing to me to think about someone like that, because he was clearly a psychopath,
Oh,
and he wore killing people with great pride. It wasn't something. I think sometimes it's just very different perspective, because perhaps we are hoping for some remorse or someone who has a conscience. But this man didn't have a conscience. So for him, he kept saying to me, "I sleep like a baby." He kept saying that. It was like he didn't have to say anything, and he was
yeah.
proud of killing people and feeling nothing. That's what he said. I felt nothing. And being an arms dealer, he was kind of showing off, and he told me that they made a movie about him. He said, "Yeah, um, there was a movie, Lord of War." Did you hear about Lord of War?
No.
It's actually, I thought, a very good film. Nicolas Cage. It was with Nicolas Cage, and it's all about an arms dealer. So
You're
this
you're lucky he didn't just laugh and shkum.
So he actually booked in a healing with me, and so we spent a lot of time together. I spent about 2 hours
Oh
with
my
him,
gosh, did he
um,
really
and
need
I
a
couldn't find. There was just at no point did he ever mention
oh.
anything that he was open to heal. So I
Yeah,
eventually
I
I
was
said,
gonna say.
well, that you don't have a problem. What do you actually want me to do? Like, did you come to me for? And he could not answer that. He just said when he was in the Russian army, they weren't able to hypnotize him. And so he just wanted to try out if I was able to hypnotize him. But of course, hypnosis is voluntary. So it's up to the person. You don't just get hypnotized, because it's all about your willingness to surrender. So if I say, relax your hand, and you don't want to relax your hand, then you're not going to relax your hand. It's not some kind of magic formula. The hypnosis is just relaxation, guided by someone who's giving you an instruction. You're feeling very heavy, so if you don't follow instructions and you're not willing to be vulnerable or let go or surrender, then it's impossible to be hypnotized, because it's all based on your volition, your voluntary choice. So, anyways, Lord of War, he claimed it was about this Russian man claimed it was about him. Uh, I don't know if that's true, but he was very proud of it. He kept talking about
Ugh.
Nicolas Cage and Lord of War, and his life. He wasn't ashamed at all. He was just so proud.
He
So
was
that
mentally ill.
so that was the
This is
most
crazy.
disturbing thing, that it was really psychotic, that this person could actually be proud of killing people and be proud of being a war, part of a war, part of killing people. And he had been in an elite unit in the Russian army, and so he was highly trained as a soldier, but felt nothing and kept saying, "I sleep like a baby. I sleep like a baby." So I think regarding war and what we talked about, America, I think nuance is important. Having a nuanced perspective, understanding that humanity has the light and the dark. And I do think I used to kind of see it as more as in a black and white way, and I started to see it more in a personal way, that I have the light and dark within me, and we cannot look at any one country, any one person, any one nation, any one outsider as an enemy, because we're ignoring our own humanity and our own ability to do evil, our own ability to do bad things. And I think that's a mistake people make. They target even a politician, or because there's some very evil politicians, and we do need to call them out. That we cannot just look at evil as something that's happened uh, independently or outside of us. It's happening in the human consciousness, and collectively it's important to take on the collective energies and heal them and acknowledge the darkness and acknowledge that darkness within each one of us personally.
I understand that, but I still say we out people like, you know, Putin and these people, just like we could say Hitler or whatever. There is a name on it. It is evil, and it is follow the root down to the person.
So in
And
that example, what do you feel about the death penalty? Because in a lot of states you have the death penalty. So someone like Hitler, what would you do with him if you captured him?
oh, you know what? Um, let's say he was alive now. We captured him. Things have changed since I was young. I was always for, yeah, off them. They don't need to be here. I was always. And then I started thinking about it a little bit differently. And now I think I would probably just incarcerate him. And that a little bit might be to make sure that he feels what it's like, to have something done to him once they are dead and they go on to the other side. And I go, well, let's, give him plenty of years to think about, what he did or whatever. But so I probably would just, stick him in prison forever. But I did most of my all of my life just say, if they did something so horrendous or unforgivable or such a big crime against whatever, just let them go. Now I'm thinking differently about that. I'm even being super honest. So, but my thing is that yes, there's the light and the dark in everybody, but there are the things that happen that are people starting a war or out and out wrong and doing something different and killing a million of their people and things like that. These dictators, they need to be removed. They absolutely do.
Mm.
But I
Yeah,
think we can trace it back. I'm not gonna say that's in me or anything, it's not in me, you know? But these people that start this stuff, to me, you could point the finger at them. They're the one that if they weren't there, things would be different right now.
because Hollywood expresses a lot of very dark themes, and they love the dark themes, and they bring this out into the consciousness. And if you watch a film, you're entering that consciousness, you're entering that energy, you're entering that state. So are you so separate from it? Because you can sit watching a film about the Holocaust, or there's so many films about war, and you're part of that consciousness. You may not be responsible, but you're part of it. And if another person did something, you're also human, so you must be capable of that too, because you're human, surely.
Well, I think my thing is I understand all of that. I just, I think with everybody else, we hate war. We hate what's going on in the Ukraine, all that stuff, and in a lot of other countries as well. And I still struggle with the thing, and I understand when people say there it's collective. We have this consciousness, and we're all connected. And I freaking don't want to be.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
don't wanna be.
understand. But when you say we're going to imprison someone, then the society is taking care of that person, and the taxpayer is going to have to look after them essentially. And so
I know. That's the
we
one of the reasons a long time ago, but I now think of it as, boy, we are, killing a human being. And so I haven't fully made my decision, as old as I am, and as standing on my soapbox saying, death penalty, death penalty, death penalty. I don't do that anymore. And so I do know in some crimes, there's a possibility that it was not that person or whatever, but I do feel like that there's got to be, like Hitler or these other dictators, need to be taken out of what's happening. And if they s- were the cause of so many people dying, they, need to be put somewhere, or they need to be
Hmm.
taken out,
I
you
think
know?
the question as well, because I think of I do think you're correct that there needs to be a place where people go. Even when we think of mental health, where sometimes people need support, uh, hospital, they need to go
Yeah,
somewhere where they can get professional care. And I think if someone is diseased in their mind, which a lot of criminals are, they need some kind of support, and sometimes they cannot be integrated into society. They need to spend some time being rehabilitated. But I guess the question is, most of the prison system is not geared for healing or rehabilitation. It's
correct.
geared for punishment. All you're doing is you locking someone up, you're punishing them. And I guess it's the question is, can anyone be rehabilitated, or some people just lost causes? We cannot.
I think there's, of course, people that are lost causes for whatever reason, that their brain is wired. It's not going to change, and so I think that I really wish in the United States, they need to have better mental health. They need to have facilities. We also need to take care of our aged people that go into nursing homes and they can't afford to be there, so they're, substandard. I mean, there's a lot of change that needs to be done. And Larissa said it, the prison system is broken. That might be all over the world. I don't know. But it really would be great to
Yeah, I remember going
have
to a
some.
zoo. I don't know why I thought of this, but I went to a zoo in Hanoi in Vietnam, and I thought that zoo is just broken. We talk about prisons being broken, but there was there was only sand. It was like a sand pit. So there were these beautiful tigers. You looked kind of really sad walking around in this sand pit. There was no grass or trees, or it was really quite desolate. So I was thinking, a zoo, you can make a zoo where animals, you at least nurture them to some extent. I'm not the biggest fan of zoos, but you can make a safe, comfortable environment for them. Uh, but and the same with a prison, you can make it really terrible conditions. I've seen some films in place where people were in prisons in places. I read a book about somebody who was in prison in India, and it was just the most shocking book. It was called Shantaram, and it's an Australian man who wrote this book about his experiences in an Indian prison. And
Mm.
if anyone's curious, it's quite a revelatory book. It's so interesting. He's such an interesting man, and I couldn't believe this, because a lot of people just die. The conditions are so bad that
Yeah.
it's you just die. And I think they had a bit of a food chain, a bit of a hierarchy, and if you're not on the top, then it's going to kill you quite quickly. So that's, if anyone's interested, it's called Shantaram. It's
Well, we
worth
don't we
reading. Worth
we
reading.
yeah, we don't have the right answers for prisons and jails. And my first job, real job, it was in law enforcement. So I did work in a jail. And
Oh, really? So you have a lot of experience.
oh well,
Amazing.
I worked in a jail where the celebrities in life would go. So
Oh,
it was an affluent area. And so I feel like, it was humane, absolutely. But, and that's not the case, historically or even now in prisons. And a lot of the people where I worked, it was a jail, so that means a 2-year sentence. But the people, and I know the females would have families. They would make families, and then they had communal cells where they could, and they were free to walk wherever they want, watch TV, and do all kinds of things. So it was different, but to put somebody somewhere for the rest of their lives, they should be able to uh, you know, have, some kind of passion for something to do. Maybe it's to help humanity or something like that. But, so opportunities and things. But it isn't anywhere in the world. I don't know. I don't know that anybody really has the answer to how to do that. But the other option, if they have a death sentence, is that they die. And now they went and are saying that getting an injection is cruel. But what is the thing they decide to do? Shoot them with a gun. And I'm just like, nobody's got a good answer to what to do. I mean,
Yeah,
there's,
and it's also I'm just thinking of what is, when you say humane and you're like, well, someone's being killed, they're dying. So I mean, there's more humane ways, there are better ways of dying that are more effortless. Like an injection, I think is more, it's a little bit less extreme, but you still, the process is the same. They're still dying. It's same with
yeah.
animals. If you kill an animal, you're killing an animal. You can do it in a more humane way, but it's still ultimately you're killing an animal. So
Hmm.
um,
I
but I
don't
do
like
think
the suit.
it's such a big and such an interesting topic, how we treat the idea of criminality. And I think it brings us to another subject, which is drugs. And because in America, a lot of the issues are around drugs, and it's such a huge and complex topic. I'm just reading Andy. I'm just reading the comments, and I just want to get to Andy because you've written some great comments. Is it true that Reiki is covered by health insurance in Australia? Some health insurances will give you some credit, or they'll give you like a 30%, whatever it is. You'll get some money back, but you won't. When you say covered by health insurance, you're still going to have to pay 70% for the Reiki or whatever it is. You're not going to get
Oh.
it covered, but you can get some money back. So often the health insurance in Australia, they'll pay a portion of it. So that's how it works. Yeah, there's often this like you pay in the difference, or you pay
Hmm.
they call it a gap payment. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
There was a job here that I was interested in, and then I go, "Wow, this is that would be so boring." And there's something that's used around the world, some equipment, and the people that invented it live here. And so lots of doctors and lots of, whatever. And they just needed a place where you just answer the phone, take messages. And I thought that's so I would be too bored. The money was insane, but the benefits were even better. And like it was like free massages and days off, mental health days off, all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my gosh, free massages and free this and
free
that.
massages. Wow.
Yes, that was part of the benefits for the job. So
Wow.
well, we are over the top of the hour already. My
Uh,
gosh.
Did you see the comments? So Sabrina, I would like to know how my future will be as a model.
I
Well,
do
when you
have
ask this
that.
kind of question, Sabrina, I just realized that your life, you're still going to wake up in the morning, you're still going to feel tired or whatever it is. So sorry, I'm always very nuanced. I always like, we need a nuanced perspective on life. We need to know that, whatever you're doing, you're still going to wake up yourself. And then that was my initial response. The magic is, there's still going to be challenges. It's not a fantasy. So
I did
it's a
ask if she was still here so I could,
yeah.
take
And
some cards, but
Andy,
she didn't come back.
I'm just going in order. I cannot figure
Oh,
out
okay.
chopstick. I thought I was the same, Andy. And when I was in China, I had no choice. I was just handed chopsticks. Didn't have any other choice. So I used to just do these things, and all the Chinese people would come and laugh at me. And I managed, and
Ah,
I you get attuned to the chopsticks, and you actually start to enjoy them and prefer them. So after a month or two, you get sort of attached to chopsticks, and you cannot imagine life without chopsticks. So yeah,
you
it's kind
know,
of interesting. My technique is apparently terrible, but it works for me. I managed to eat. But regarding Buddhist culture, would be interesting. Yeah, when you say Buddhist culture, just realize there's lots of different countries and schools and traditions. It's not, and same with any religion. I think there's not a monoculture. It's very varied, and there's definitely the Rajana school, the Mahayana school, the Theravada school that are quite different in their expression. But just think of it as going to Japan, and they have Zen Buddhism, which is different from Thailand, for instance. So Thailand is more of a monastic class, but the Chinese tradition is more of a engaged Buddhism. So it's about being engaged with society and not separate, not separate. They have a bodhisattva ideal, which is really about, we're here to help people, we're here to help the world. We're not here for selfish purposes only, because some people view the journey of enlightenment as an individual selfish path, because it's just about your enlightenment, whereas the bodhisattva ideal is about helping other people, bringing everyone up, enlightening the world. And Larissa, thank you so much. Larissa's comments, that's beautiful. There is duality. Yeah, I think that's such a big topic, Debbie, about duality, and that's what I was speaking to, that there is the light and the dark. And as you say, Larissa, thank you so much for your comments. We are oneness, and unfortunately, there is evil in this world, but all the goodness can counteract with love. It is the highest power. I really agree with that, Larissa. I don't know how you feel about it, Debbie. That's beautiful. I'm actually going down, so you probably
hmm
can't see I don't know if you can see the comments like I'm seeing them.
yeah, I can see him.
Um, Larissa, affluent person is way different than the populous person. My question: do you believe a long distance Reiki done over prisons may be able to change some people's mental state by sending the Reiki healing? Has there been a study of any kind done to try and heal people long distance? Yes, there have been quite a lot of studies, Larissa, and excellent results. So scientifically, we do have validation regarding long distance healing. It seems like, particularly when people get into a group, the collective energy is strong, and we're able to influence weather patterns, influence energy patterns, and people's mental state.
I'm going to tell you that I have a friend that went to Texas, where they send healing from all around the world, and it's a certain day and a certain time to certain patients. She was one of them that got to be involved like 8 weeks ago or something like that, and she was there, and all this healing was sent. Everybody was doing that, and later on, when she is does have stage 4 cancer, and we knew that her kidneys, everything was affected. She went home, and she had a test, and her kidneys were 100%. They were fine, and the rest of it she didn't get completely healed, but her kidneys was surprisingly absolutely functioning fine. So, but they do study that place in Texas, and they do look at the results. So I thought, to me, that was a very positive, indication that the healing was working. But I'm a healer, and I send it long distance, and the people come and say, my aneurysm's gone. The next day, I had the photograph; it's gone. That they are healed of all kinds of things. So, for a fact, I know that it works. And it does have to be
Yeah.
in front of them. Long distance energy will seek out what it needs to seek out.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic because it's, people often want to, well, people want to be healed, of course, they really want to be healed. And there are people who, there's so many stories, and I recommend a book called Spontaneous Healing, which is by Andrew Weil. And Andrew Weil
Love him.
he's a cool
I
doctor.
love him.
And books like that book specifically, he's gone out and interviewed, found out people who did have these spontaneous healings. Sometimes people were given a week to live. They were on their deathbed. They were, the priest was coming to visit them, and they had a miraculous healing. It's fascinating to read about those experiences and realize that anything is possible. I know there's, so many people have sort of tried, they've said that we've tried everything, and maybe they have tried everything and it hasn't worked and it's disappointing. Oh, Larissa, wow. So it is disappointing when people are not able to heal, and it's,
David,
I
I
don't,
think, for whatever reason, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it works, type of thing. I think because otherwise everybody would be healed, right?
yeah,
Completely.
yeah. But
So,
I
but
think the positivity is really important, that it is possible, and
absolutely.
we
But I
have to.
want to tell you this one story that happened twice with me. And that was when I got contacted by people saying that their grandmother was on their deathbed, right? And they had already called the mortuary. They already an RN was with her and all of that. They said, "Can you do something?" They said, "Of course I'll do it." Now these are two separate people. Same thing happened, and I did my thing, and I sent the energy. And you always have to temper that a little bit with the other side. God's will, but I'm sending that energy. So I did my thing, and then the person woke up in the morning and want to go to the mall and get dressed and have breakfast and all that. Same thing with the other person. Woke up, everything's great, they're wonderful. These two people and don't know each other or anything. They lived on 3 years longer, for 3 years. And the only thing that I know is I was sending all the healing I could in, because you wonder, if they're on their deathbed, is it their time to go? It wasn't their time to go. And I'm telling you, the mortuary's called. They're waiting to come pick up the body. And I said, yeah, I will try. And then, of course, I got called again for somebody else. They asked me the same thing. I said, I'd do it. And that woman came right out of it, lived for 3 years. I just thought it interesting that they lived, both of them, 3 more years.
It's
But
fascinating, and
I do have to go, David, because I have to go to
oh,
work.
okay. Well,
I'm on a
God's will be
timeline here.
done. And Larissa, I would love to hear more from you. Thank you so much for coming in. I'd love to hear about your story. Did you read that, Debbie? I never
Yes, I
prayed on
did. A
myself, and
healing. Yes,
yeah,
you
that's
can. You
extraordinary,
can heal
Larissa.
yourself in different ways, because I teach people to put the white light in, and I healed my knee when they said, well, surgery, we're going to take this out and the other. And I said, wait a minute, I'm a healer. Healed the knee, still to this day. So, yes, Larissa, and you can contact David because all of his information, email, and everything is in our description. If you want to have a discovery with him or any of the things, his YouTube, it's all there. Also, he takes donations. His PayPal is scrolling across the screen as well as in their description of the show. So we got to get going.
Well,
But we'll
thank
see
you
you
so
next
much,
week, you
everyone.
guys.
Sorry, no time for readings.
Yeah, I
It
know.
was really
We kind
wonderful
of
for
got
me.
into all these great subjects.
So
All
many
right.
topics.
Okay, you
And
guys. We'll see you
so
next
believing
time.
is the key. Thank you, Larissa. Believing is the key. And see you next time, everyone. See you
Okay.
next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.